There's one thing that I share with leaders a lot today, and that one thing is about building your leadership brand. It's something that's vital for you as a leader to be, what are you going to be known for or remembered for? But also it's about building your brand, that awareness around you as a leader today. Many leaders don't focus on that. I had a great interview this week with a lady called Paige Arnof-Fenn, and she's the founder and CEO of a global branding and digital marketing firm, Mavens Moguls. And Paige was sharing about the importance of being a thought leader in today's world, but about the fact that you are a brand and you need to build a presence. And that's why we've called this episode Leadership Branding in the Digital World. It's a great interview. Paige is a fantastic lady. So sit back and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. I've got a great guest with me today. Her name is Paige Arnof-Fenn. Paige, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is basically Boston in the
Boston.
U.S.
In the US, yeah, very good. And have you always lived there in Boston?
No, I grew up in the deep South, Tennessee and Louisiana. I went to high school in New Orleans. I went to college in California, and I worked in New York City, Washington, D.C., Cincinnati, Ohio, Los Angeles. I've moved a lot.
Sounds like it. Maybe have you done a list of all the states you want to go and visit and how many more to go?
I haven't made that list, but that I would love to visit every state. And I studied abroad in France and Italy in high school and college. So I've done a few overseas stints as well.
And this is what I like too, because there's a lot of people in many countries around the world that they don't travel. They don't go outside of their country. And I think it's valuable to go outside of your country to see other countries and how they are and how cultures are as well. But also the US is massive in the number of states. And it's almost like you go to many countries within the US too. It's so different in some of the areas that I've been to as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I've given a brief introduction to the listeners about you, and I see that you're a founder and CEO of a global branding and digital marketing firm called Mavens Moguls. What we would like you to do is just to share with the listeners a little bit more about your background.
So after college, my first job was on Wall Street in New York City. It was the 80s and Wall Street jobs were kind of a thing back then. Michael Douglas had just won the Oscar for the first Wall Street movie. And I was enamored and I beelined to New York and did that for 2 years. And then I decided that was not going to be my career path after all. I went back and got an MBA and did a career shift into marketing. My first job was at Procter & Gamble, probably the most recognized and successful marketing company in the world. All of their products are number one and number two in their category. I worked at Coca-Cola. So my first chapter of my marketing career was in corporate. And then the internet started taking off in the mid to late 90s. And I left behind the corporate cushy job and joined an internet startup in Los Angeles. And I did 3 internet jobs as the head of marketing, and all 3 companies either went public or got bought or sold. And then 23 years ago, I hung out a shingle and started my own marketing firm.
Wow. What a journey. Tell me, because a lot of people today are talking about AI and, oh, be careful of it. And to me, it's about change, right? And a lot of change when we went from cassette tapes to DVDs and then onto CDs and then onto DVDs, people were like, oh, it's not going to work. And then the internet came as well early on. And then people were like, oh, when you were in that, right, more or less at the beginning, as you said, it was starting to take off. From a marketing perspective, how are people handling change with internet for it coming in? How was it then? Because I think it's probably relevant for what people are experiencing today.
Yeah, my first internet job was in 1997. It was Internet 1.0 before the bubble burst. And I worked for a company that was in the kind of pop culture space, music and entertainment. And so it was very heavy with video and things that jammed up computers back then. It would crash your computer more often than not because people were just starting to get higher speed internet access. So we ended up producing our content on a CD-ROM that we could send out to people because it was a more stable, positive experience. And then as high-speed internet access, DSL, cable modem, as that became more pervasive, people were able to enjoy the content online. But yeah, Internet 1.0 was pretty clunky, actually.
Yeah, I bet. Now, the other thing is I noticed is that you've on several boards as well, and also that you're a speaker, but also you write for magazines like Entrepreneur and Forbes. Tell us more about that.
So I think being a thought leader is a really great branding approach. And I know when we get into the leadership discussion, I think for in business to business, B2B service companies, being a thought leader is a great way to stand out and establish your brand. So when I first started my company, I wrote a monthly column for Entrepreneur magazine for about 4 years. And then I did Forbes magazine for about 1 year. And I love speaking at events, conferences, trade shows during the internet, during COVID and everything moved online. I did a lot of virtual events. So it's a great way to build your brand, increase your visibility and awareness. And we'll get into that a lot further, I think, today. But yeah, I think in this virtual world, if you don't exist online, you almost don't exist anymore. So I think it's really critical for people to get leverage the platforms.
Actually, I know we were talking about it a little bit later on, but actually I want to jump into it now. I think there's the question.
Excellent. Well, yeah.
Yeah, because I actually think it's really quite important here. You coming from a global branding and digital marketing expertise and field, a lot of people think, oh yeah, that's for businesses and things like that. And I actually think it's the same for leaders as individuals. We've got a brand, but also we need to be out there to do that. So how important is it for a leader to, let's start with brand first and we'll come back to the digital side of things. From a brand perspective, how important is it for a leader to build their brand?
I think it's critical. And in fact, a lot of times when clients first come to me, they'll say, I'm not famous. I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not LeBron James or Taylor Swift. I'm not really a brand. I just run this company and it's a local or regional or even a national business, but I'm really not famous. And I actually couldn't disagree more. I think CEOs and leaders, whether you're in a big organization like the Coca-Colas of the world, or you have your own brand, your own business, I think it's absolutely critical that people do consider themselves a brand and understand that they do need to build a presence, because if you don't define your brand, other people are going to define you instead. And you don't want your competition dictating how people think about you. So we do a lot of executive branding, personal branding for people that are either, like I said, they could be running a division inside an organization, they could have their own brand, they could be a small business like me where they hang out a shingle on their own. But it is absolutely, being invisible today is a terrible strategy. And so before people want to have you invite them to be on your podcast, before they want to meet you for lunch or coffee, it's very natural that people are going to Google you and see, who is this person? Are they worth my time? Should I return the phone call? Is this email spam or from a nobody, or is this somebody that I need to know about and care about? And so I would encourage all the listeners and all the leaders out there, you should Google yourself and find out what comes up. With a name like yours or a name like mine, if they Google us, they're going to find us. If your name is Bob Smith or Susan Brown, a lot of things are going to come up and they're not going to know how to find you. But for people like you and me, they're going to find us. And so what does it say about us? Is it things that we want to be known for, or is there a lot of digital dirt out there that maybe doesn't clean up so well? And you have to know that because you're planting seeds and people are making a decision about you, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah, and I think in marketing, we talk about when we're looking at products, services, things like that, or a company, a brand, it's to get to know them, like them, and trust them. And I think that's very relevant for leaders as well around their brand as well. And I love what you just said there before about being invisible today is a terrible strategy. And I think people say to me, "Oh, Dennis, no, I don't do LinkedIn." I said, "What do you mean?" "No, I don't do social media." "Okay, cool. What do you mean by that?" "No, I don't have a LinkedIn profile." And I went, well, and I really want to say to them, you're dumb, because that is dumb strategy. It's silly because the thing is, just like you said, I say to them, they Google you, and one of the very first things that will come up is your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Not only the fact is that does your photo look good and all that sort of stuff, and it makes sense in what you do, but also they check out how many contacts you have. And like I say to people, get to 500 at least, because it goes 500 plus. Where if you only got 200, then they go, well, she or he is not very well connected. And so they don't have
Right.
a strong network, and it's not good. So I think, listeners, the thing that Paige is saying here is do yourself a favor and make sure you understand that you are a brand, that you do something about it. And in particular, look at your LinkedIn profile. Well, for one area, as an example, right? There's other things you can do too, but I think it's very important.
Yeah, LinkedIn is more than an online resume or an online Rolodex. It's basically the way that you build trusted relationships in a digital economy. And one of the great things is about it, when you look somebody up, it will tell you how many mutual contacts you have in common. And that's a great way to do a back channel check on who is this person. We know people in common. If these people are people that I like and trust and know, I may pick up the phone or drop them an email and say, how well do you know Dennis? I just got an email from him. And is he a good guy? Is he smart? Is he a straight shooter? What's the deal? And it doesn't necessarily mean you don't know the strength of the contact until you check. It could have been somebody you met at a networking event with 300 people in the ballroom and you exchanged business cards and you've never spoken since. Or it could be someone that was like your college roommate that knows you really well. So it's a really important opportunity to do some due diligence on the people you're meeting with, or maybe you're pitching them for some work, or maybe you're going to join a board that they're on, or they were a speaker at an event that you really connected to and you want to follow up with them and you just want to learn a little bit more. But we all walk around with these phones in our pockets now. And the truth is, everybody's got a megaphone. Everybody's got platforms, and you don't need to be everywhere. You absolutely can pick which channel is the best one for you. What's the most authentic for you? For me, in the B2B service business, LinkedIn is absolutely my platform of choice. For me, it is very professional. Like you said, I've got more than 500 contacts. I filled out my profile completely. There's a photo of me, there are recommendations, there's some thought leadership. So it's a great reflection of the business and the brand that I'm trying to build. You will not find me on Instagram or X, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook. Those are really not playing to my strengths, and that's not where my clients are looking for me. I think the biggest mistake that a lot of leaders and people run into is they spread themselves too thin. They want to be everywhere and they don't do a good job on any of the platforms. And I think that can really dilute your brand because you're not showing up well and you're not sending a consistent message. And as you said, you want to connect with people you like and trust. And you don't trust people that seem very snarky on X and very social on Facebook and very buttoned up and very professional on LinkedIn. Who is this person? Which one's going to show up at the meeting? I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to connect with this person. So don't give people a reason to rule you out. Give them a reason to want to build that relationship and get to know you better.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff that you're sharing there. That's really, really cool. listeners, if you're not taking notes, go back and listen to it again and take notes, because there's some really cool things that Paige is sharing here. You've mentioned thought leadership a couple of times, and I think that one thing is, and this is more the digital marketing side of things, and I'm going to call it digital savviness. It's one thing to have a profile on LinkedIn and online, but it's actually important to do something about it, right? And do something with it. So people say to me, oh, yeah, but I don't want to spend 8 hours a day on LinkedIn. I'm going, well, you don't spend 8 hours on LinkedIn. Have it targeted, be smart about it, and things like that. But you need to contribute. And that's the thought leadership side of things. Your thoughts on that?
Yep, I completely agree, but you have to know what's authentic to you and what plays to your strengths.
Mm.
If you like to blog, then by all means, set up a blog. But if you're not committed and disciplined enough to keep the blog conversation going, I always say do not start a blog. It would be a major mistake because, again, you're going to dilute your brand if you set up a blog and the first week you are so excited and you do 3 postings. And then the next week you're a little busier. You get 1 posting up and then you're traveling for a week and then you come back and you're busy and it's 3 weeks later and then you do a little bit of a post, but not very interesting. And you're not really getting comments, and the people that are saying things you're not even responding to. That's a disaster. What you need to do is find the well-trafficked blogs in your category or industry, and you chime in, you follow them. They already have the audience. They're keeping the conversation going. And on those weeks when you have time to comment, by all means, make comments. Leave a signature so people know how to find you and follow up. And what you'll find is every time Dennis makes a comment, I agree with him. That guy, he's really smart. He's so insightful. He doesn't say a lot, but when he talks, I agree, I like it, I respond. And so then you're building your brand as being a thought leader on a very well-trafficked, great blog. But you don't have the pressure to do the heavy lifting to keep the conversation going. You're obviously incredibly gifted with podcasting. Everybody doesn't need to set up a podcast. You can join as a guest on great podcasts like this one. I don't have the discipline and I don't have the energy that you have. So I'm the guest and you're the host, and that's playing to both of our strengths, I think. But it shows thought leadership for both of us for different reasons. But it's a great way for us to share what we know, and you see the energy and the excitement because I'm spending my time and energy doing the things that I like doing, and you are keeping the conversation going and finding these great guests. So just pick your lane and be honest about where you want to play and how you want to play. You don't need to be everywhere, but you do need to be active on the places where you are.
And I've just done an episode really about the 10 lessons from going from 0 episodes to 700 episodes and what I've learned. And then one thing I say is people come to me and they want to start a podcast, and I'm asking, okay, so what's the thinking about it? Why do you actually want to start one? And it's not that I'm trying to deter them. I'm actually trying to see how committed they are doing it, because there is work, and the average is 7 to 10 episodes people give up. So
Great.
I go, why don't you go and be a guest on 20 podcasts? They do all the hard work. You're in there. You don't get me wrong. You need to prepare for the actual interview as well, which is important. But they'll do the work. They'll send it out to you, and then you can utilize it. But then you get to get the taste of whether you want to do it or not. But then it is all about your brand, the thought leadership, and it all keeps coming up. So it's really good.
You can put links to everything on your LinkedIn profile. If you have an email list, let's say you do a monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly email newsletter, you can include your thought leadership. And again, it all feeds on itself. And if you don't want to start your own newsletter, there could be newsletters that appeal to the same audience you do, and you can contribute articles to those newsletters. Again, there are lots of ways to repurpose content. If you've written something, you can then turn it into an infographic. You could turn it into a bunch of tweets. There are ways that you can cross-promote and really leverage the content that you're creating. You don't have to, it's not a one and done. There are a lot of things you can do if you want to be creative. But you do need to have a strategy, and you do need to be disciplined, and you do have to be honest with yourself about where you're going to shine the brightest.
Yeah, good. I love that. And the other thing here with it, and just in addition to what you're saying there, or as part of it, is the when you decide and you do things, you can repurpose, as you say. I take so because not everyone listens to podcasts, not everyone watches a YouTube. They might well like reading and things like that. So there's different. So you got to go cater for everybody. And then what I do is I tend to take the audio out of the freestyle version I do on a Friday. We create the blog/article that goes onto the website, but then it's going into a magazine that I've got. It's gone to other things. We repurpose it and we adjust it and change it a bit depending on that. So that's really cool. I can't believe, Paige, how much time's already gone by already just talking to you. You and I can talk about this for hours. How did you actually get into leadership yourself?
Wow. Well, honestly, I went to a sports summer camp as a kid from age 9 to 16. And my very first summer, I was elected manager of my team. And my second summer, I was the team captain. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know anything about leadership, but when I think back about it, that really was my first taste of leadership, being a good athlete as a kid and being in charge. I have a kind of a big rah-rah personality. I love cheering people on and I love playing sports. And that was where my first opportunity was. And that gave me confidence in work situations or nonprofit situations to take on more responsibility. And once I got my MBA, you keep moving up the food chain.
Mm, And that's it. You got to keep moving up that food chain. You got to keep working on things and learning as well. Now, for many people, they may follow a leader or they've had a favorite leader or two or three to help them develop as leaders. Who's been your favorite leader and why?
Well, probably my dad was my absolute favorite. He ran a very large financial institution, and he was a role model and mentor for me early in my life. Today, if I'm looking at the people who are alive and still doing it, Warren Buffett to me is an amazing leader, and he's been doing it for a long time, longer than I've been alive. And Sarah Blakely, the head of Spanx, I think she's incredible. I think the thing that really impresses me about my dad, Warren Buffett, Sarah Blakely, and a lot of other people is that they're they know their strengths, they're humble, they're smart, they have a strong moral compass, and they're just you can tell that they're passionate about what they do. It really is authentic to them. They're not getting into business for the pomp and circumstance or the glory of it. It's a business that means something to them personally and professionally. They treat their teams really well. And when they see when the clarity of the vision that they have for the business, they just don't let people distract them. Like, they will not take no for an answer. They'll incorporate feedback, they'll do their homework, but when they see an opportunity, they are just dogged until they conquer it, and I have so much respect for that.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that clarity and vision is very, very strong. Now, you choose which one. If you were to take one of them and sit on a park bench having a cup of coffee with them, if there was one question you wanted to ask them, what would that question be?
Oh my goodness. Wow. I guess Sarah Blakely to me, because we're contemporaries. I love the fact that she turned her professional success into also very philanthropic and community success. She's invested so much in things that are tangential to her business. Spanx is a fantastic brand for women, and I just feel like she has taken her kind of passion and energy from business to help her community. She's done things in sports, other things in business. And I guess I would just want to know, like, how did she do it? It looks so obvious, I think, from the outside. You're successful, you make all this money, and then you get to get involved in things. But I'm sure everybody was pulling at her for a million different things. How did she not get distracted and continue to add value and do things that really matter to her, that without getting lost or distracted along the way? It looks like she's done it beautifully.
Yeah. And sometimes things are so obvious that sometimes we don't even see it, number one. But number two, we overcomplicate it. And so it is so obvious sometimes as well. Paige, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does it mean for you?
Well, I think it's absolute reality. My first job in marketing was in 1990. I worked on Wall Street in the late 80s, starting in 87. And I just think leadership has changed so much over the years. And as you brought up earlier with artificial intelligence, we're going through another revolution now. I think leaders need to be more agile than ever. I think they have to have a growth mindset like they've never had before. I think they need to be problem solvers extraordinaire. I think that the skills that you need today are more than ever before. I think there was this simplicity when life was slower and not as complex, but now everything's on internet time, and the computers and robots have added another layer of complexity. And the thing that I always tell my clients, the AI that you need to focus on, don't get distracted by all the fancy tools and technologies because ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, it seems like there are more AI tools every week. There's a new one to learn. But at the end of the day, the AI that's going to matter the most, I think, for leaders is building authentic interactions, those relationships that are actually going to be where the rubber meets the road. Like that's where the real connections are going to happen. And that's where the business actually deals get done on a human level. It doesn't matter if you're a business to consumer, a business to business, a nonprofit, a Fortune 500, a venture backed startup. It all comes down to the people. And if you don't have those human connections, if you're not able to show your humanity and be human in your interactions, I think that the robots basically make everything sound the same. It's not unique, special, or different. And if you want to connect with your audience, if you want to build a unique brand, you've got to show your human side, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what people remember. Those are the stories that sell. And that's what people latch onto. And that's how you own real estate in your customer's brain. So when they have a problem that your product or service can help them solve, that they think of you first.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Build authentic interactions. That's a cool AI tool. There you go, AI. Sort that one out. That's awesome. Hey, Paige, because I think it's about being real as well as the stories that you're talking about is very important. And so I think what you just shared there is probably one aspect that will actually help leaders be successful today in its fast-paced, ever-changing world. Would there be anything else you want to add to that about what they might need to do?
Well, just do it with intentionality. Be be disciplined. You can't boil the ocean. Start small and build as you go. When I started doing public speaking, I started on a panel. I started in with nonprofits in my community. And as I built my reputation, as I built my confidence, then you can do things. It's like concentric circles. You go out another circle, another rung, and then you can do things in your region. You can be a solo speaker. Then you speak on a national level. I've spoken at a lot of international conferences. Now you can do things online. But same thing with writing. You can start small, a local business journal, a local newspaper. Then as you move up the food chain, you get national and global recognition. I think taking baby steps, getting those training wheels as you build slowly, steadily, I think that's really the best way to do it. No one is an overnight sensation. You don't win an Oscar, a Grammy, an Olympic gold medal overnight. It takes years of training, and nothing worth it is easy to do. If it's something, a big goal, you have a big job, you want to run a big organization, you got to learn from the bottom up. You need to start in the trenches, build your reputation and build your momentum as you go. And I just find the people who are more focused and determined, I just think those are the biggest success stories. Those are the people that it might look simple in retrospect. They were an overnight sensation, but they've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it does take time, practice, things that you probably won't see when they're doing it, but you'll see them up on stage, but they're doing so much work in the background too. And so that for leaders, listeners, is something that you need to think about, is that how you keep developing yourself. One, keep listening to this podcast, but not just listening to it, but going through and actually learning from the actual things that have been shared by our guests who are sharing wonderful insights like Paige is doing right now. Paige, you and I have been talking about leadership. If we were to change lens now, and let's talk about leadership still, but also look at it from a perspective of an employee. You work with organizations and they all have employees. Is employees' expectations of leaders changing?
I think it is actually. You and I both started in the big corporate world. You were at Hewlett Packard. I was at P&G and Coke. And back then, the company was like your big brother or your dad. They took care of you. They trained you. They developed you. They sent you to professional development. And, you got on the conveyor belt. And if you stayed long enough, you'd keep moving up the food chain. Today, I feel like all bets are off. Employees have to, you can't just rely on the company to take care of your career. You have to own it yourself. And I feel like it's not just about getting mentoring from above, it's about reverse mentoring. You need to figure out what you're good at that you can train others and you can help others so that they're growing too. And they see the value in you as a more junior person in the trenches that actually brings new perspective or new tools with you. I also think employees today, and maybe it's just surviving through COVID the way we all did, we saw each other at home, we saw each other, their families, their pets. I think employees expect people to be more human, more vulnerable. You see the good, the bad, and the ugly a lot more than we used to, I think. And I think for organizations or leaders that are trying to just show you the fancy, perfect side, that doesn't really work anymore. Like, people know that there's another side to everybody. So I think, again, it's the authenticity, showing your humanity, being honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And especially in a more remote hybrid world, people, they want to bring their whole selves to the table. And that might mean working from home a few days a week. It might be being virtual. And in the old days, it was just a given. We were all going to work 5 days a week. It wasn't even negotiable. But now I think employees expect to have a voice. They want to have a seat at the table and they want to be seen, and they want to see you in your kind of holistic way, not just the dressed up fancy version. I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that.
I do, I agree. You can see it happening all the time. And I call it, you talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I talk about it being, you're being real. You're showing you're not hiding behind a mask or a title and things like that. I think that's very important. So I agree with what you're saying. There's some really good insight there. Where do you see, if you get your crystal ball out now and look at the future and you think about 5 years from now, where do you see leadership being?
Wow. 5 years ago, before the pandemic, would you have ever guessed we're here?
Mm.
I guess if I'm putting a stake in the ground, again, the world has sped up so quickly. The level of complexity, the global interconnections, the geopolitical world. I guess I feel like instead of there being, a chairman, a CEO, a president, I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years from now, there were more companies that were run by something called the office of the president, or kind of a leadership team more approach. Because I just feel like the job is almost too much for any one person to bear on their shoulders. I feel like it's more of a divide and conquer strategy going forward. I don't know. I don't know that any superhuman one person can have such deep leadership insight and on everything that is required today. So It may end up being more of a team approach. I don't know, maybe like an office of the president, an office of the CEO, where people are able to do their best work on the things that they do best in more of a team, collegial, collaborative situation.
Where they collaborate a lot more rather than being hierarchical and doing it that way. Yeah, and I actually see that is a lot of can be a lot on one person. But smart leaders, they always get the right people around them, and so that it is. And I think that's what you're saying. It's an office whereby there'll be a lot of good people who get things done and make things happen, which is really good. It's been fascinating talking to you today. Thank you for being on the show. If people are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
So, website and LinkedIn are definitely the best places to find me. But as one of my clients said, because my last name is hyphenated and my company has an ampersand in the middle, she always forgets one of the words or two of the words. So she said, all I ever remember is Paige and Mavens. And she goes, when I put it into Google, you pop right up. So thank goodness for search engine optimization and having a kind of unique name. So that's always a good place to find me as well.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, Paige, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great conversation, and and keep up the great things that you're doing.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Well, there you go, listeners. What a wonderful interview. Are you a thought leader? What's your brand like now? Do you build a strong presence out there? Or are you that person that's invisible? Because actually, it's a terrible strategy. So you want to actually make sure you do build a brand. Having clarity and vision is very important. But build authentic interactions. What an awesome kind of statement and kind of concept that Paige has just shared there as well. Well, it's time for you to go divide and conquer. Hey, listeners, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.